And a question for you about, I guess, the diversity in the learning experience that will be more integrated. What I've seen is a true learning to work with differences is if you have teams of not just business students in maybe different fields, which is fabulous start, but true working with diversity would be if you had in that team, a writer, a psychologist, a poet,
Absolutely.
an engineer, and that would be really interesting one day.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Stanford D School is a great example of having taken this idea of a virtual school initially with design and engineering and the business school, and really expanded it to every discipline on the Stanford campus. So I think that we have the potential here for Sauder to take leadership as we become more familiar with the studio model and its capacity for learning and for collaboration, and take it outside of Sauder, whether it's at the undergraduate level or perhaps at even at the PhD level. So I think there's some very interesting opportunities for making the connection between design thinking and business, but from my perspective and my background, also design thinking and government. Design thinking and design process in terms of collaborative working models to bridge between the knowledge that exists in business and in academia and the kind of policy questions that government has. So that's another opportunity.
We haven't even touched on the
We
whole
have not.
social impact or environmental
Exactly.
impact, let alone the potential just on the economic side,
That's right.
which I think is quite
right.
obvious. So that's very exciting.
Which leads me to something that there was a little bit of a theme on my trip, was to hear someone like Roberto Vaganti from Milan talk about the need for research around design. And you and I have talked about this before. So how do we make the case to businesses that it's worth the investment? How do we make the case to students that it's worth their investment to put themselves into what you have acknowledged, and I know from experience, it's not easy to be in a design process that isn't straightforward, is not linear, isn't very comfortable sometimes. So how do we quantify what design thinking can actually value add?
That's a huge topic, huge conversation. And I know that there are bodies of design associations around the world that are working on that. And there's examples that you can look around and
Right.
just see, Apple is the one that comes, top of mind for
course.
everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's all wonderful. And I think there's some storytelling and narrative in that. And that's going to help a lot. But at the same time, I feel that there's a piece missing there, and that design is fundamentally about creation, and that's not research.
Yep.
And a friend of mine, Tony Goldsby-Smith in Australia, Second Road, who's a design management consulting company, talks about that, and that it begins with love and passion. And so in one recent experience for us, I'll give you an example with a company. They couldn't see the opportunity that we could see. They brought us in for a job that was basically a design styling type project. This is a large global consumer products company. And our design thinker, creative director, saw an opportunity that was completely under-leveraged, no one else could see, and said, I don't think that's your problem, this is the problem. And so I'm not sure that any research would have helped them get on board.
Right.
Because the interesting thing is that they didn't see that opportunity until a year later working on it together. So we did have a process, and they were comfortable with the process that would hopefully reveal something.
Right.
And they had enough faith and commitment and mandate from from the top to integrate more design and innovation. So they jumped on board with the process, and it took a year's worth of observational work, collaborative day sessions with 50 people, prototyping, research, and now halfway through the project they can see, and they're saying they're thrilled. Now we see. So there's this other element that we're dealing with, and the best analogy I can say is like a really good sports coach will believe and have the vision for the athlete before that athlete believes in themselves.
Yes.
And we find this over and over again, that often there's a seen capability that others don't see yet. And we'll have to hold that vision and be committed and convicted until the point in time when that vision can be transferred over to its rightful owner, maybe the client in that case.
That's really interesting, the research, the relevance of research in convincing business about anything. I think what Roberto was partly referring to is the need for design research to be a recognized discipline within the business school before the business schools kind of go, oh, this is something to be reckoned with. So I thought that was an interesting comment just on business school culture, that, and not just business school culture. I think for any kind of new interdisciplinary idea to kind of find its footing there with academics, not necessarily with users or business, but with academics. Okay, so show us the work that's being done in this area that makes it relevant. And that kind of calls into question for me, what is research, what is design research, what is real world research, what is action research, all of the different kinds of research that aren't a typical empirical type of research project. So that's, I think, another side of how will design thinking and design and business settle into business schools and settle into the curriculum, I think will depend on our ability to communicate and our ability to create a community of practice with business.
I couldn't agree more that we do have to communicate it, and any leading design firm is taking that challenge seriously, and we have a whole return on design that we are measuring to the best of our ability. Speaking about return on design, so we've been in business for over 20 years. We've had some phenomenal successes with clients. Creating Mike's Hard Lemonade, a local for a local company that went global, success. Diversity of clients now. And so we're true believers in the whole return on design. It's undeniably massive value. But what's next for my company is we're looking at how can we bridge and fuse in more business thinking, more business skills in the front end, go upstream to a higher level of design thinking that just isn't about the end product, and be able to help our clients, economically, and then making social impacts and environmental impacts, and make really big changes that way. So what's next for you and Sauder?
Well, I think that you raise this very interesting question of balance with design thinking and business thinking, and it's occurred to me as a designer that yes, in fact, business thinking needs to migrate itself over into design schools, just as we're infusing the design thinking idea into the business school. I think we're in a pilot stage with our the Bachelor of Commerce d.studio offered up this fall, some pilot work in the MBA integrated core, and the development of a community of practice over the next couple of months, gladly funded by the UBC Teaching and Learning Enhancement Fund grant, to be able to look at engaging people like you from the business world and also our global connections collectively. So I think that's going to take up quite a bit of time. But I think from a broader standpoint, it's also about education generally around creativity in the K-12 sector, in the in post-secondary writ large, and really moving this whole way of thinking into society. So I think we can start where we can target our energies, but at the end of the day, it's about a considerable shift to allow us to really seize the day in terms of the opportunities that exist.
Well, I'm absolutely thrilled that Sauder is beginning to think this way and beginning to take some steps, and not just for, you know, candidates and hiring, you know, for firms like ours or our clients' firms, but just for knowing the potential that this is going to make, you know, in what's really needed today.
Well, Ron, I want to really thank you for being what I hope is the first of several conversations that we're going to have over the next little while, and keeping each other posted and engaged in figuring out the future.
It'll be a iterative learning experience.
It will be. Thanks, Ronna.
Okay.